The Wahhabists are divisive and ignorant, with neither wisdom nor piety. They claim that people have been living in unbelief for centuries. If they could, they would even destroy the stone of the Kaaba, wrote one contemporary. The Wahhabists don't just defile the mosque of the Prophet, they also destroy the graves of respected Muslims, regarded by the people as saints. No one could predict that these Wahhabists will one day wield global power. But then Mohammed bin Saud comes on the scene. As leader of an important Bedouin tribe, he can give powerful support to Abd al-Wahhab's fanatics. The strategic aims of the two men coincide. One wants control of the Arabian Peninsula. The other dreams of bringing all Muslims under his fanatical influence. They mount a campaign of destruction against the Shiite cities of today's Iraq and Iran, cities they see as nests of heretics. Mohammed bin Saud's ambitious plans will fail. He is caught and executed by the Turkish Sultan. But in the 20th century, his descendants will again seek power in Arabia to force through their radical form of Islam. This time they succeed, founding the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
There's no question that the Wahhabization of Islam is the principal reason why the West thinks of Islam not just as monolithic and archaic, but also as violent and obsessed with jihad. These are the foundational principles of Wahhabi Islam. What is interesting, however, is that the Wahhabists make up the tiniest fraction of the world's 1.5 billion Muslims. If there weren't oil in Saudi Arabia, no one would have ever heard of Wahhabi Islam because it was a Bedouin religion.
Oil makes the Bedouin tribe of the Sauds the world's richest family. Suddenly they're being wooed by the great industrial nations. And the clan of the Sauds control the sacred sites of Islam. That gives their regime legitimacy in the wider Islamic world. In today's Saudi Arabia, the Quran is the country's constitution. This is a kingdom without democratic institutions, with a concept of justice from a very distant past. Women may not drive. Thieves have their hands amputated. But the Saudi Arabian model is only one of many in Islam. The event that permits the rise of the Sauds also creates the Middle East as we see it today. The fall of the Ottoman Empire. Caused by the First World War. In 1914, the Ottoman Turks joined the fighting on the side of the Germans. By this time, Enver Pasha's military government in Constantinople has deposed the last Ottoman Sultan. The Germans know that their ally is militarily rather weak, but they have other ideas how to use them against their enemies. In the archives of the German Foreign Office is a remarkable document. A top-secret plan for the deposed Sultan to announce a worldwide jihad against Britain and France. There would be terrorist attacks on the Suez Canal, suicide bombings of politicians, uprisings in British and French colonies. The German High Command believed that the Sultan has complete authority over Muslims, like the Pope in the Catholic Church. His word will be obeyed worldwide. It's a fatal misunderstanding. In Islam, there has never been one single central religious authority able to rally all Muslims across the world. The plan fails. But this is a global war for Muslims too. Hundreds of thousands fight in the Near East and in the trenches of Europe. Turks die beside Germans. Muslims from Algeria die for France. Indians die for the British. The Ottomans fight bravely. But theirs is a lost cause. A Turkish officer called Kemal Pasha returns to defeated Istanbul as a war hero. Later, they will call him Atatürk, father of all the Turks. Kemal Atatürk seizes power and founds the Republic of Turkey on the ruins of the Ottoman Empire. As dictator, he forces through a cultural revolution that has no equivalent in Islamic history. Radical Europeanization. School for everyone, the Latin alphabet, universities for women, the abolition of polygamy and of the veil. Under Atatürk, Muslim Turkey's constitution strictly separates state and religion. Many Turks are proud of that. Others now demand a return to Islamic traditions. But Atatürk's legacy can no longer be erased. For the Arabs, too, World War I is an epical event. For most Arabs, Ottoman rule means brutal suppression. They hate the Turks. When war breaks out, the British study ways to take advantage of this hatred. They pay huge sums to the Emir of Mecca to rebel against the Turks. The British officer sent to guide the uprising is T.E. Lawrence, Lawrence of Arabia. For the tribe's help, his masters promised them an independent Arabia. Constant attacks on the railways hamper Turkish reinforcements. The Arab uprising helps clear the way for the British march northwards, all the way through Palestine to Jerusalem and Damascus. The Arabs have a vision, an Arabian kingdom with Damascus as its capital. But at the peace conferences, the British have forgotten their promises. Instead of creating a greater Arabia, the British and French divide the Middle East according to their own commercial interests, with strokes of the pen on the map in the best colonial tradition. There's no consideration for ethnic and religious realities. Most of the boundaries they draw with their ruler and fountain pen still exist today. The victor powers create Syria, Jordan, and Palestine, where later Israel will be, Iraq, Lebanon, and many other states. some of them centers of conflict to the present day.
It's part of sort of the historical memory of the Arab world. And it has, in many ways, created this sense of mistrust, a sense that, whatever the West says, you can't really take them at their word. And I think one can really understand why this is. I mean, it's born of experience.
The democratic governments of Britain and France create a series of monarchies in the Middle East. Kingdoms are more predictable for the European powers than unstable, untested democracies. But in the great cities of the Middle East, in Cairo, Damascus, and Baghdad, opposition to the colonial powers and their puppet governments grows. Intellectuals, some of whom have studied in Europe, found parties. Liberals, nationalists, and socialists spread their ideas. They agree on one thing: the need for independence. The British and French try to nip these tendencies in the bud. Arrests are routine. Only slowly, after a Second World War, unrest and civil conflict, will the colonial powers withdraw from the Middle East. One man becomes the symbol of Arab independence and a new pan-Arabic consciousness: Egyptian President Gamal Abdel Nasser. In 1956, he nationalizes the Suez Canal, still under British control. The British, French, and Israelis attack Egypt. But international pressure forces the invaders to withdraw. It's a great triumph. Nasser reawakens the dream of a pan-Arab state, reaching from the Atlantic to the Euphrates. For a while, the idea seems to gain momentum. Egypt and Syria form a political union. It lasts for just 3 years. The nationalist euphoria soon ebbs away, replaced by a sober realism. Anywhere oil hasn't raised Arab states to unbelievable wealth, the Arab world remains backward and poor. Many disappointed people seek refuge and comfort in Islam, with its emphasis on justice and its apparent incorruptibility.
La religion est venue à l'intérieur de ce cadre pour offrir une demeure à chacun. C'est la sécurité du foyer. La religion offre cette possibilité-là, et l'islam en particulier. L'islam offre des garanties spirituelles à tout un chacun de pouvoir s'en occuper du début de sa vie jusqu'à la fin de sa vie.
But what religion is this? There is no single authority in Islam. There are institutions like the Al-Azhar University in Cairo that have a degree of authority. But in reality, any believer in any branch of Islam can choose which scholar and which interpretation of the faith he will follow. From fine moral judgments, protecting individual human rights, to radicals preaching confrontation and holy war.
Nowadays, anyone can go online and have access to thousands of different authoritative interpretations of the Quran or Islamic law. And because in Islam there is no pope to say which interpretation is right, which interpretation is wrong, that becomes the purview of the individual.
From the very beginning, there has been a branch of Islam seeking a direct link to God without the intermediary of an imam or of an interpretation. These are the practitioners of Sufi Islam, whirling dervishes.
If you have the problems here in this world with anything, you cannot know the best answers of the questions. You have to die because you have ego here. Our ego wants so many things. Do this, go have fun while you are here. So you cannot know the real answers if you want to know. You have to die.
Dying means entering a trance to remove the wall between the human being and God. One expression of today's heterogeneous Islam. Muslims believe in the Quran as the word of God. A community of the faithful grew out of Muhammad's vision. But today, the Holy Book does not just unite Muslims, it separates them too. The question is, where does the Holy Book belong? In the mosque or in the civil constitution? Islamic countries have answered this question in many different ways. There have long been not just one, but many Islamic worlds. But outside of Islam, many people still confuse the fanatical interpreters of the faith with the great majority of Muslims who abhor terror just as much as the rest of the world.
Man meint, die Muslims sind gewalttätig. Die Muslims sind so Terroristen. Die Muslimen muss man sich in Acht nehmen, wenn man mit ihnen zu tun hat. Aber dann muss ich selber fragen, wer hat 2 Weltkriege gemacht, in denen mindestens 60 Millionen Menschen Opfer gebracht haben?
And I don't think you can blame faiths for the vast majority of the conflict situations we have today. I don't believe that. Indeed, I would go further. I would say that if those conflicts, which are essentially political conflicts, if they were resolved, interfaith relationships would automatically find their right place.
Wir müssen auch den Muslimen Zeit lassen. Wir haben in Europa Jahrhunderte gebraucht für bestimmte Errungenschaften. Wenn Sie an die Geschichte der Frau denken, wie lange haben wir gebraucht, bis die Frau diese Position und Würde hatte, die sie jetzt in zivilisierten Gesellschaften hat? Sie können nicht erwarten, dass im Islam das alles über Nacht geschieht.
Arab system is tribal system. And the tribal system, the head of the tribe, he is the man who thinks. He is the man to distribute the food. He is the man to order. So for that, people just to obey. This matter made the Arab world is behind. Now we say to change the tribal, and this is what Islam started, to change the tribal to a society.
The rapid increase in literacy and education in the Muslim world, the rise of new technologies like satellite television and the internet, which has made information and opinions available to people in ways that would have been unimaginable, 20, 30 years ago. In fact, I always say that the internet plays the same role in the Islamic Reformation that the printing press played in the Christian Reformation.
The only way to eradicate extremism, the only way to eradicate violence or ignorance or misunderstanding is through education. We only can do it through education. You cannot do it otherwise.
More than 1300 years after Muhammad, the Islamic world has many faces between ancient traditions and radical modernity. Where oil income turns into targeted investment in countries like the United Arab Emirates, Islam comfortably combines modernity and tradition. Those in power can construct both universities and magnificent mosques. Elsewhere in the region, the challenges may be far greater. Islam brings comfort and support in poverty and hardship. But if it is to steer its adherents away from the fundamentalists, it must find a way to coexist with economic and political development for the broad mass of believers.